Hello everybody, I'm Martin. Welcome to another episode of Minecraft Enigmatica 2 Expert. Today, we are going to continue on with blood magic and hopefully finish it up, or at least finish up from the perspective of this mod pack. I hopefully won't have to go too deep into this, and it doesn't look like it from the recipes I've seen, but we should probably discuss a few things. One of which is that I spent quite a few hours making upgrades to my altar and to my process here to make things easier. So let's start with the first thing. I basically started automating the arcane stone into living stone chain and finally figured out where I went wrong with the applied energistics to formation and annihilation planes. So back over here, I have it on its own subnet. You can see how I have the quartz fibers leading up to the annihilation planes. The formation planes are on the bottom. These both only provide power to these subnets. These subnets are using the full 8 channels. If we look here in this back corner, you can see I don't have the 8th one in here because I don't have enough channels to handle it. I could probably work around that, but I'm not going to bother. But as you can see, one of them just finished. Yep, they're not finishing. They're being instantly destroyed and replaced. Where I went wrong before with these and couldn't figure out why none of this is working was because this needs to be an import bus down here on the one pulling the items out. But this one up here is not an export bus. It has to be a storage bus into an inventory for the type of item we're trying to remove. And we're limiting it to Livingrock to make sure that it can only pull out the Livingrock that's been transformed and not the arcane stones that are sitting here, because this will destroy anything that it touches otherwise. From here, we have another storage bus that leads back into our main network so that the Livingrocks are provided. And this is similar. There's an export bus constantly pulling out arcane stone to fill up this box. So we have a full drawer of 8 stacks of Livingrock available to us at pretty much all times now. Coming back outside to the altar, the second change that I made was to upgrade all of the runes around the altar. There are a bank of speed ones. I've got 9 of them in here total. I believe 19 is the total you can put in this to have it work at full efficiency. I'm going to have to go up to tier 5 before I can do that. There's also a bunch of sacrifice runes in here that are supposed to increase output from the Well of Suffering, but I can't tell if they're actually working. And finally, I have a bunch of these runes of augmented capacity, which are the upgraded versions of the rune of capacity that just happen to require tier 4 to make because they require the demonic slates. But the problem is you need to be aware that these aren't just a straight upgrade of the normal ones. The normal ones provide, I want to say it's either 1,000 or 2,000 life points. This is a straight modifier. But if you start slotting in the augmented ones, you'll find that you instantly lose your max capacity on the altar. And that's because they provide a percent increase, and I believe it's 10%. I had to put 15 of these in before it started surpassing the amount of my normal rune of capacity. But they scale exponentially because they constantly add a percent bonus. So now if we look at my blood altar, I now have just shy of 200,000 max capacity when I need to craft stuff. The third change is that you can see there's now a stairway down below my altar. And that's because I added some dark glass so you can see what's in here, as well as a floor where these runes are for the Well of Suffering. Because I'm not going to lie, I did blow this up again when I fell in here removing the runes on the altar to replace them. So we're not making that mistake again. But coming down these stairs, you can see that it's now, you can see the mobs down in this farm, as well as a second layer that I added. I can probably add a third and or fourth if I need to, but due to mob caps, it's probably not necessary. And honestly, the bulk of what I do here is mostly using the passive throughput on this anyways to turn the Livingrock into the first stage of the slates. The higher tiers take a bit more, but I don't need as many of those, at least not right now. Now coming into the quest book, we have 3 main tasks ahead of us. One is the Awakened Activation Crystal I couldn't do because I didn't have enough will, which will be solved by making the Greater Tartaric Gem as well as the Grand one, which just requires a ton of will for the most part. We'll talk about that in a little bit though. And then making the tier 5 Blood Altar, which I think is where we're going to start, which just basically requires 4 beacons, which aren't hard, and a whole bunch of blank runes. So I guess let me go dig out some even more space, move that crate, praying my stairs don't get in the way, and let's go build the next tier. Well, the good news is that it's tier 5. I did misjudge it. It has to be 3 wide like that, and the beacons are only 1 off the ground, but that meant I had to move my staircase over, and now I can't properly access the area with the ritual below the altar because now there's not enough space, and it's just kind of ugly, and there's torch spam everywhere, and deep down I just kind of hate this. So I guess we should do something about that, huh? So I didn't really moderate out the colors all that much, but I did add some vegetation and some framing around it to make it look a little bit better at least. So that's done. I guess I should go make the mage orb that's supposed to go with this now too, so I can increase my capacity, huh? This one, however, requires a Gaia Spirit and 80,000 Life Essence, which I think we at least have covered in both cases, right? And done with that now as well. But we're going to put that back on so it can charge up. Wait, that's a lie. I've got to bind it to myself first. There we go. And with that, we have another quest finished. And unfortunately, this brings us to the remaining steps for this particular chapter, which, like Thaumcraft, are not all that well integrated into Enigmatica. Outside of doing these quests, I don't actually think this whole part of Blood Magic is even used by this pack. So I'm mostly going to skip it, other than what I explicitly have to do to continue. Because to continue, we have to make the Awakened Activation Crystal, which, as far as I'm aware, doesn't actually do anything. I could be wrong, but it doesn't serve any immediate purpose for us. But we need more Demonic Will to do that, and to do that, we need to make the Greater Tartaric Gem. Well, this has a hiccup in it because it requires the subset of stuff from Blood Magic that we aren't really interacting with. It specifically requires a Demon Will Crystal, which we have to go make out of other Tartaric gems. And this whole system is used basically to power up the Sentient Armor set, which we're not going to make. It's basically the whole big gimmick for Blood Magic, and we're not going to do that because I'm already wearing the better set. You can't see it, but I am, because I made the Draconic set, remember? I guess let's get started on this, huh? And to get started on this, we need two different devices. We need the Demon Crystallizer and the Demon Crucible. The Demon Crucible is pretty easy to make. It requires 400 will max and 100 drain, but I've got a full 1000 crystal. And the Demon Crystallizer is the same thing, but requires a Hellfire Forge, which we've done before. So let me go throw those together so I can be sad that we're even doing this part. Okay, so I made the two devices. I stuck them back over here in the corner just for somewhere to put them. But there is something you want to be aware. You need to have the devices placed in the same chunk, because what you're going to do is melt down a Tartaric gem, much the same way as releasing flux in Thaumcraft. So when you melt it down, it'll release Demonic Will into a chunk, which will be bounded right here. And the crystallizer will then take that will and make crystals out of it. So, make sure that they're both in the same chunk and you won't have a problem. I did charge up a Tartaric gem. It took me a little bit, but from there you put it into the crucible and wait for it to melt down. This is probably going to be a little bit. And since I've never personally gone this far into Blood Magic, I just learned something, and this explains my unanswered question of how do you get more Demonic Will doing this. And this is the common Tartaric gem I had in my Hellfire Forge powering it to make the crafts with. It was half used up. It's not completely full again, so it must have extracted it straight out of the released ones from the Crucible. So that's actually good to know. The other thing of note is that there are two rituals that go along with this process once you get it going. One of them consumes, oh, and there's the crystal, just on schedule. But one of them consumes mobs, not unlike the Well of Suffering, to make them grow faster. And the other one will shatter these as they grow bigger, so that you end up with a piece of silk and continue growing. And there's a third ritual that you can use to gather them up, or just use a vacuum chest. Okay, so I broke the first crystal that I got. Normally you want to let them grow a bit more. They will grow more tines as they get bigger, and you can break it into individual parts. But as you break them, you can build them back into another crystal and place it wherever you want. But really, we just need this first starting one so we can make our gem. Alright, and now I've got the Greater Tartaric Shard made. Now all that's left is making the Grand one, which is just another star. And 4,000 will that I have to go bank. So I'm going to be killing stuff for a bit. Gave me a little while. Alright, so 4,000 only really took one good night of monster bashing, so that wasn't too bad. And since I kept a Tartaric gem burning while I was in there, you can see that the crystal is growing more petals. This means we can get more leaves off of it as long as we leave one up there. You can also make these clusters from 4 of the Demonic Wills, which you can then put anywhere you want, and not just on the crystallizer if you want to make more of them. There's also a rare chance they will spawn a different colored typed version of the crystal, which you can then turn into that type of crystal, or you can put into the crucible to burn to put that type in the aura, which will cause it to be more likely to be picked up into the crystal to grow more of them. All stuff we don't need to do because it really only applies to sentient armor. Let's go make my Tartaric gem so I can be done with this. Alright, and now we have a Grand Tartaric gem. the top tier. Now we've only got one last thing to finish up blood magic, which was the Awakened Activation Crystal, which we already have the pieces because I went and made them all before I realized I needed this much charged up. But we already have this much charged up because I didn't use this much when making the grand ones. We can just go toss it all in the Hellfire Forge and be done with this. And boom, done with blood magic, or at least the parts of it that I know I have to do for this pack. Now I just need to make some of the ethereal slates and we can actually move forward with the next couple steps before we can make the creative tank. But let's go open up our loot chest and see how much trash we get this time. I'm betting a lot. Alien Collector that I probably don't ever need again. More food. Power Cell, which I don't know, maybe I'll be used for that. Probably not though, not with flux points. My Cell Lamp, come on really. No. I don't know what that is offhand. So I'm just going to assume all of that was junk, even though I don't know what the Dev Null is. I suspect it's probably a trash can of some sort, though. Anyhow, mostly finished up blood magic, though, right? And by mostly, I mean completely, and we now have the checkbox, and now we're done with this. So, good progress, and now we can finally move closer to the end game. If you found this episode interesting and entertaining, please consider to like or subscribing if you're new. As always, I'm Ard. Thank you for watching, and have a nice day.